to be doing a 5-number summary. So what does it mean to summarize something? Yeah, to shorten it, give kind of the overall big idea. Okay, so it's a way to show how the data is spread. We could say spread out if that makes more sense. A way to show how the data is spread out. So sometimes we have numbers that are like really close together, and really the summary is like, oh cool, everyone did this amount. Everyone got a 32 on their test. Pretty much. There's a 31, 32, 31, 32, 32, 33, 32. Most people got 32. But sometimes we have things that are really spread out, which is mostly what happens in our data most of the time. So for number 1, our first thing that we're going to do is we find the minimum. We find the minimum. And what's another word for minimum? Least, or the smallest. So that's actually our first one, and then we might actually jump to number 5 and find on the opposite end the maximum. And so that's actually step number 5, is the maximum. And maximum would mean the biggest or the greatest. Whichever one makes most sense to you. If you want to put biggest, you can. I'm going to put greatest. In the middle, does anyone remember what do we call that middle number? Started with an M. Median. So at number 3, we're going to do the median. And the median is going to be the middle of the whole set. Oops. So we have 2 other ones that maybe we haven't thought of before. These ones, so minimum, maximum. No, do your notes. You're going to sleep. You're getting ready to sleep right now. Okay, do you need a pencil? Okay, perfect. All right, number 2 is we actually call this, it's the lower quartile. So lower and then quartile. So Q-U-A. R-T-I-L-E. Lower quartile. All right, and quart usually means how much? Like a quarter, 4 quart. There's 4 quarts in a gallon. So it's a lower fourth. Sometimes we also call this Q1. So I'm going to put comma Q1. And what the lower quartile is it's the middle of the bottom part. So it's another middle, but instead of doing middle of the whole thing, Abdi, is that not a good spot for you? Okay. It is a good spot? Okay, focus. Okay, lower quartile is the middle of the bottom. We don't do the middle of everything, we just do the middle of the bottom parts. So from below the median, we find the middle. All right, and then step number 4 is our upper quartile. Which is sometimes called Q3. We'll talk about where Q2 went in just a moment. So if you're like, what? You should be like, where did Q2 go? We'll talk about it. So upper quartile, or Q3, instead of it being the middle of the bottom, we're now going to do the middle of the top. All right, so as we work through this, really what this is doing is it's breaking up our data into quarter chunks. What percent is a quarter represented by? Yeah, 25%. Okay, Dane, put your phone away. All right, Joelle, don't bother Dane. All right, so at the very bottom here we have our minimum. I'm just going to write min for minimum. At the very top, we would have the maximum. In the middle, we have the median. Okay, in this next part here, the part in between minimum and median is our lower quartile. And our spot up here would be our upper quartile. So just like we said, quart means 4, so we're breaking it up into these 4 spaces. It's kind of the space between each spot. So between our minimum and our lower quartile is 25% of our data. And that marks our first quarter. So this is why sometimes this is called our quarter 1. Quartile 1, not quarter 1. Q1. Anil. I would, because we're going to, as mathematicians, we go between the two quite often. Sometimes we'll do LQ for lower quartile. Sometimes we call it Q1 for quartile 1. So I'd make sure I have those because those are kind of interchangeable. We switch those out a lot. So in the next part here, we have another 25%. And that would lead us to our second quartile, so Q2. Not very often do we call the median Q2, but that's going to kind of help us understand why this is Q1 and what's the upper quartile, Q3. It's our third quarter. So that's why we don't use Q2. We go from Q1 to Q3. So this is another 25%. And then we have the last 25% here. So that would be our 100%. 25, 25, 25, 25. So it shows us what's spread out. And it's not always exactly even like this, where it looks like everything is like the same distance apart. Sometimes 25% of our data can be really close together, and the next 25% of our data is really spread out. All right, so interquartile range. So for IQR, we get that from saying inter for I, quartile, Q. So even though this is one word, we use interquartile. We do it as a prefix and as the base. And then range, so IQR. And the IQR, the inter, usually means inside. So inside here, we have a middle 50%. So to do our middle 50%, we're going to take our upper quartile and subtract our lower quartile. All right, we're going to do this 2 times. Our first example is a little bit more straightforward, and then our second example, we're going to have to do a little bit more math, a little bit more thinking. All right, this is where we're going to start using our colors. So if you want to use colors, you can. It's going to help us out. All right, so as we take a look, our first one says Mustafa collected data to see how many pets each teacher owns. So our first step that we need to do is we need to order our data. We need to go from least to greatest. So we're going to rewrite this data out in order. And if you can write it kind of small so it lands all on one line, that would be really nice. If it doesn't, that's okay. You'll be fine, but it might make it easier to look at. So what's my smallest? What's my least? 0. Okay, and then 1, 2. 2 threes, so 3, 3. Four. Yeah, 3 4, so 4, 4, 4. 5, 7, 16. 16? Who has 16 pets? Just kidding, I do. You do? I have chickens. I count them my pets. Or you might have what other animal might not be weird to have 16 of? Have 16 dogs? That would be crazy. I was thinking fish. Thanks, Miss Glenn. I appreciate you. You're so weird. All right, so we're gonna do our this thing. So to start off with, in the first position, we always have minimum, and I always go in that pattern because it just helps me remember what is what. So I have minimum, and then on the other end, I'll have maximum. Middle, I have my median. And then I'm going to find my lower quartile and my upper quartile. And I'm just going to use LQ and UQ for lower and upper. Now, I do this in the same order. Again, some people do it a little bit differently. You could figure out how many numbers there are and where you're going to stop and break in the middle. For me, I always just learned it as go in that order and break it up in different parts. So first I'm going to find my minimum and my maximum. I'm just going to do those the same colors because they're just on opposite ends. Since it's ordered, it's pretty easy for us to see what's my minimum. 0. What's my maximum? 16. So minimum is 0, maximum is 16. Getting sick? Allergies? Probably allergies. It's getting springtime. All right, next up, we're going to find our median. So this is the part where I was telling you that if you learn to cross things out as you find median, it's not going to be helpful because we actually want to keep those numbers. So I like to do dots. So I'm going to do my dots. You could also just use your fingers. I think I forgot to show that to you the other day. So you could do 0, 16, 1, 7. Now, depending on how you wrote, your fingers might be too wide like mine. I got stubby fingers, so it's hard for me to do that. So 0 goes with 16, and I'm working my way in towards the middle. So 1 goes with 7. Again, we're not crossing them out, otherwise we'll have to rewrite it again. Okay, 2 goes with 5. 3 goes with 4. 3 goes with 4. Is this the 4 in the middle?
Yep.
3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Good, I have 5 and 5. So the first 4 is my median. All right, so since that's my median, now I'm going to go below my median for my lower quartile. So I'm going to start at that 3, the one right below that first 4, and I'm going to look below that. I'm looking at these numbers. And I want to find out what is the middle of those numbers. So again, you can do dots. Now this time, since I did dots below, I'm going to just do dots above. So 0 this time goes with 3. 1 goes with 3. So our median is 2. But it's not really the median, it's the lower quartile. So it's the middle of the bottom numbers.
Oh, so the median stops like you get 5 and
Yeah, the median like breaks it into the 2 groups. So now in our top group here, for our upper quartile, I lied when I said we needed 5 colors. I'm only using 4. Now we're going to find that middle of the top. So this first 4, or we don't use that 4 that was the median. We're going to start at the very next 4. Goes with 16. 4 goes with 7.
it's 5.
And our middle is 5. All right, so as we take a look at this, how are things spread out? In the first couple, it goes 0, 2, 4, 5. Those are all pretty close together. So 0 to 2, that's 2 spaces, 2 pets. 2 to 4, that's a 2 pet difference. 4 to 5, that's only a 1 pet difference. But then as we look from our upper quartile to our maximum, 5 to 16, that's really spread out. And that's kind of my experience with people. If you have 5 pets, at that point, you could have a crazy amount of pets, right? Like if you're committed to owning 5 things, you could own like who knows how many. Yeah.
Hey,
It kind of goes up crazy. Yeah.
So is it possible for like the median to like 2 numbers that we have to add?
Keep that in mind. All right, next up we got IQR. So IQR, we're going to do our upper quartile minus our lower quartile. So upper quartile minus lower. So what was our upper quartile?
5.
5. And we're going to subtract our lower quartile. Which is 3. All right, and 5 minus 3? What? Yeah.
2.
Who said 3?
You.
Giving us our answer already. My bad. 5 minus what?
You.
2 is 3. So our interquartile range is 3, meaning that our middle 50% only varies by 3 pets. Which makes sense. For most people, there's not much of a difference in 3 pets. You either have 3 pets more or 3 pets less. All right, we're going to do one more example. This one we're going to have to think a little bit more in depth. We're going to have to do some of our practice. All right, it says the data below is the results of a test in intermediate algebra. What are some things you notice about these numbers? Perfect, they're already ordered for us. It goes 2, 15, 58, 63, 72. Yep, they're all in order. What else do you notice about it? Yeah, huge disparity. What's the highest somebody got? 100%. We're going to assume these are percents. And what's the lowest? 2. Yikes. So big disparity. Where do most people fall? And where are most of our percents? Yeah, like 70s, 80s. So C's and B's. Good. All right. So let's order these first. So we have minimum. If we went from just 1 to 5, it'd go minimum. Let's use Q1 this time instead of lower quartile, because again, those words we got to connect to each other. Step 3, we could say quartile 2, but very rarely would we say that. We would say median. And then we'd have quartile 3. And we'd end up at our maximum. All right, minimum, maximum, that one's pretty straightforward. If you don't need to even color code that because you know what minimum, maximum is, that might be one if you are running low on colors, maybe skip that one. So minimum is 2, and our maximum is 100. All right, next up, before we can find the bottom of the middle of the bottom or the middle of the top, we have to figure out where is the top and where is the bottom. Where is that middle part that breaks it in half? So that's where we're going to find our median. And our median is where we count high, low, high, low, high, low. These are a little squished together, so instead of doing dots, I'm going to do underlines. That's another way to do it. So 100 would go with 2, 98, 15, 95 with 58, 92 with 63, 90 with 72. Remember, if you ever get lost, you can always count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You should have the same amount on both. 88, 72. 87, 74, 85 with 76, 84 with 78. Oh, and we have 2 in the middle. We have 78 and 81. So our middle comes right in between those two. So we have to think, if we could think it out in kind of a long distance thing of 78 to 81, we have to now figure out the middle. So we could go 78, 81, 79, 80, and then we'd end up with, I don't know, some numbers. I got lost there. So that's always a good thing. So to do that, what do we do with those two numbers when we have 2 in the middle? We add and divide by 2. So 78 plus 81 divided by 2. If your colored pencil is not sharp enough to write that, that's fine. You can just do that in your normal pencil. Cool, and I'm going to pretend I have my calculator. So 78 plus 81 divided by 2, and we'd end up with 79.5. Alright, so this time our boundary is created at that 79.5. So I want to do my lower quartile with everything that's below 79.5. So starting at which number is below 79.5? Yeah, that last 78. So for our quartile 1, we're actually going to start at 78 and go below. So that's kind of the part that gets a little goofy, because here, when it was an actual number 4, that 4 didn't get put into either group. But this time when it's in the middle, we're just thinking if the middle number was there, it wouldn't be in either group. But 78 isn't the middle number. So now we're finding the middle of this one. We want to try and work ahead. If you're still like, what the heck is she doing? Remember, we're going in towards the middle. So we're going to start at 78 and 2. And we're working our way in towards the middle. I like to do dots. And that's why I did underlines as well, so that way I can tell the difference. Some people can just do it with their fingers. We have two 72s in the middle, so our middle of 72 and 72. So both are 72 in the middle. So how would I find the middle of 72 and 72? Yeah, it's 72. If you're not sure, if you were to type it in, if you're like, I don't know, That math doesn't make sense to me. If I add 72 and 72, and then I divide by 2, dividing by 2 is just saying what plus itself makes that number. Okay, if you need to use calculator, that's okay to do. Biggest thing here is when we do this in our calculator is a couple of things. When I type this in, if I type in 72 plus 72, and then I type in divided by 2, is this how I want it to look on my calculator? Is that what we want it to look like? No, and that's not going to get us, we know the answer is supposed to be 72. That gets us 108. So there's a couple ways to do that. Either you can do 72 plus 72, and then hit enter, and then divide by 2. So do it in 2 steps. Or you have to start by doing the division sign. So that way we have the 72 plus 72 on top, and then the 2 on the bottom. Okay, so a couple ways. You either have to do it in 2 steps in your calculator, or just in the 1 step. All right, so our answer there is 72. So that's a pretty big difference for our first 25%. It's between 2 and 72. But then in between our quartile 1 and median, that's pretty close, 72 and 79. That means a lot of kids got between 72 and a 79%. There's a lot more in that gap that were close together. Okay, this one, the same amount of kids, but they're spread out. They're further apart. All right, quartile 3. That's going to be starting at which number? Good. Starts at that 81. So if you did this already, you might have forgotten that 81 up there because it was on a different line. All right, and then we're finding that middle. Oh, and we have an even number again. This one's a little bit easier. We could do this one in our head. What's right between 88 and 90? Yeah, 89. There's only one number right between 88 and 90. But again, if that's not something that your brain thinks about, of finding middle, you can't really like visualize that, think about that in the middle there, you can always use your calculator to do that. So in our calculator here, I'm going to just use this one that I already have typed out. We have 88 plus 90 divided by 2, and yep, we get 89, because 89 is right in between 88 and 90. So between 79 and 89, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 scores. Between 89 and 100, there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 scores. So each of these chunks, if you look back where I drew those arrows, there should be 5 scores in between. So it starts off with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, and that's where our quartile 1 was. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, quartile. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, quartile. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yarvin, Edgar, Brass. Alright, IQR, we're going to take our quartile 3 minus our quartile 1, or our upper minus our lower. Again, those are just different ways to say those same things. So what is our quartile 3? 89 minus quartile 1? 72. And we end up with 17. So as a teacher, when I'm looking at your grades and I say, oh boy, we went from 2 to 100, that makes it really hard for me to process, like, okay, did students do pretty good? Did students not do pretty good? Where did we end up? And I can see that there's a 17-point difference between my middle 50% of students. And that tells me that kind of 17 points or 17%, depending on the test, might just be 1 or 2 questions. So I can see, oh, in the middle there, they only differ by 1 or 2 questions. And so that 72 to 89 is a pretty good, like, C minus to B plus. That's where my middle 50% landed. That's pretty good. All right, great. You guys have the rest of the time for a quick check.